It is October. I'm actually wearing a hoodie. I'm dressed for the occasion with trick or treat pajama pants because it's almost Halloween. I am so excited to be live here to chat about the TV that we watched this week, which will include season 3 of You that I'm going to try to convince Kate to watch. We're going to be talking about the Only Murders in the Building finale. I should say season finale because it's not the series finale because we're definitely getting a season 2 and we've got some things to say about it and anything else we watched and read this week. I am joined by the lovely co-host Kate. Kate, how are you and what news do we have this week?
I'm good, and we actually have a fair bit of news this week. So, in the sad department, Jane Austen's Persuasion that was in development with Netflix has been canceled. There is still another one in production, the one starring Dakota Johnson. I think it's Fox running that one. However, it's still sad. I would have taken two. I would have appreciated it. I don't care. Also on the Netflix front, there is a thriller coming out starring Dakota Johnson about called The Lost Daughter. And it's somewhat of like a mother-daughter dynamic thriller. It's got Dakota Johnson, like I said, and Olivia Colman, and that's December 17th. I saw some news, but I don't understand. So if you can explain, that'd be great. Something about CW's Naomi.
CW's
like
Naomi.
Yeah, it looks like it was supposed to be another Arrowverse show. It looks like they're kind of moving into kids being stars because it sounds like it's another young person starring in it.
Oh yeah, I did see. I think that was that came out of it was announced at the Fandom or something. Yeah. I did see some chatter about that. Was that it was in this last week that it came out. Wow, time has warped. I don't know why I thought that was a little bit longer ago. Produced by Ava DuVernay. So familiar with her. For example, she did Wrinkle in Time, among a bunch of other things. Casey Walfall will be the young Superman, the young superheroine. I don't know why I just said Superman there. Trauma. Let's see. Yeah. Is she young? Let's see. She doesn't look young.
Maybe it was just like something about the picture I saw that gave that impression.
Oh, she's only 16 years old. You're right. She does not look like 16 years old. That's an interesting choice. I wonder if they're like intentionally picking somebody who's young but who looks older. You remember with like Pretty Little Liars, they had like everybody was like 25 to 30 and then there was like one random 12-year-old who looked older than all of them. I feel like that's this case. Like this chick looks older than most of the 30-year-old CW stars. Sorry, continue.
I will take your word for it, but and then in other Arrowverse news, there was Batwoman drama today. I am uninformed about it.
I did follow that.
Yeah, I know that it had something to do with Ruby Rose's injury, but that's kind of where the extent of my knowledge ends. I was walking to something, and I just kind of was flipping through it, and kind of lost track after that.
Yeah, Ruby Rose posted like a few things on Instagram. I think it might have been 4 or 5 posts basically saying it was an unsafe work environment. She was forced to constantly work when she had neck injuries and back injuries, and they were constantly trying to guilt her about it. And they said, you know, we'll just fire you and replace you, blah, blah. So she left, and indeed they did. But it was like a really bad working environment. I think what really struck me about it, because Ruby Rose is not the first person to, whether it's for the CW or any network, but I know there's been quite a few cases of stuff coming out about the CW not having really, you know, appropriate work environments for all of their staff, certainly, especially staff who aren't stars. So you can imagine for if your title character is being treated like that, imagine how, you know, your background's being
Mhm.
treated. But what really struck me about that was she has to come out and say this because nobody has really stood by her. In fact, I'm sure you remember, I definitely remember when she first stepped down, you know, I was upset because I was, well, not very upset, but I was a little bit like, oh, the show's kind of over because she was like definitely the best one on there. Although I'm giving it a chance because female led shows deserve the grace we give male led shows, whatever. But there were a lot of people being like, oh, you know, she just couldn't take the grind, or oh, she ditched. There was just like a lot of negativity. And I'm not talking about from the network, but just like fans in general about her stepping down. And I think that is kind of the framing that made the story today kind of stand out more. That when she stepped down, all of her former cast, male and female, I'm looking at all of them, all her former directors, all of them, they stuck with the show if they were given the opportunity to do so. No one came out and defended her. Someone came out and took, you know, the role and, you know, joined the CW party line and didn't do anything to, um, you know, whether it be defend her or give any homage. Like there was a lot there where most of the people, if the conditions are like what she's saying, most of the people who are around in season one should have been familiar with it, and it's really disappointing to know that no one came out and supported her. And it definitely has me looking at the side cast in a different light. I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
That's all.
I
In
mean,
in
I could, yeah, I
conjunction with
vaguely
all
remember
of
that.
the Peter Roth and everybody else that she rightfully called out, but we already knew that they were awful.
Okay. Thank you for informing me. Another thing of Netflix news, I'm sure there was other stills, but the only one I saw was a first look at Kristen or Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer for Netflix's The Sandman. That the Neil Gaiman, based on Neil Gaiman's work. I'm excited for that. I forgot to write down what day that comes out, but I'm excited to see that one. I haven't read Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, but I've read other things of Neil Gaiman, which I really liked. I thought you read the Sandman comics.
Me?
Yes.
No, I haven't, which is odd because I dressed up as Death from the Sandman comics, but I was really just
Okay.
dressing up as Felicity as Death from the Sandman comics.
Okay,
I'm
that's where I thought that was.
I've actually, at the time that I dressed up as her, which was like a billion years ago, even though I just stumbled across the costume in the closet like a couple days ago, I glanced through some of the art. I may have read a few pages on like Comixology or whatever, but I didn't like really get into it. I would not say I've really read all the Sandman comics or most of them.
Okay. Yeah, I just remember you dressed up like her one time, so I
I
was
sure
trying to
did.
test that out.
And I had the Who is
Okay.
Felicity Smoke little vesty thing.
And then to round this out with the news, I put another Jane Austen news at the very end. Sanditon season 2 on PBS is going to be airing on March 20th.
Okay,
Yay!
exciting. I have that on my to be watched list.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first season. I don't honestly remember how a lot of it went. I remember liking it. I just don't remember how it goes, so I need to rewatch it before season 2 comes out. But I am excited for that. And that's all I have for the news today.
Exciting. Any day where we have any Jane Austen news is exciting. I am like reading yet another book, which I think I mentioned last week, because I am an unstoppable problem. And I mentioned to Kate this week that now I suddenly have an urge to read a period romance again because that's the only thing that is like not on my in progress right now book list. So
Yes, you mentioned that, and I immediately went, "How about this one? And this one? And this one? How about this one? Here's this
Immediately began
one."
suggesting books, and I was like, no, I need to finish one of the 7 books in progress right now before I start yet another one. In the chat, Stormy says, "Hi, ladies. Hi, Stormy." And she
Hi,
adds,
Stormy.
question, thoughts on Ruby Rose's comments about Batwoman set. I think I thoroughly addressed my thoughts at this point. I will still be watching Batwoman season 3, although I'm not. I think I'm like 1 episode behind right now. Well, Kate, before we get into the Only Murders in the Building finale, which for those watching, we'll definitely be talking about spoilers, so go watch that. Would you like me to pitch to you why you need to watch Netflix's You, which I just marathoned this weekend? Well, I marathoned the 3rd season of it, the 3rd installment of it. And what do you know about it so far?
You are more than welcome to try to pitch it, but what I know so far really tells me I won't like it.
Really?
Yes, so I know it's about this man, I don't know what his name is, and he has a tendency to stalk women in order to woo them, and it follows his method of both fixation and like emotional manipulation into getting them to care for him.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. So the thing that makes this, I want to say, like, stand apart from just every typical show about like a show slash real life documentary of sociopathic male serial killers who stalk women, create these fake meeting scenarios, try to get them to fall in love with them, blah, 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 eventually kill them, is that in this one, he is like, we get to see inside of his head a bit because he kind of narrates the show. And he is this incredibly revolting mix of like narcissistic, psychotic. I don't know. I can't sit here and diagnose him. It's a fictional character. He is constantly rationalizing his every action as it goes, where like he thinks he is deeply, fully in love with this woman. He thinks that she has total power over him. He thinks he is in the right at every turn. At everything he does, he finds a way to rationalize it. And it doesn't make you empathize with him at all more. It makes you empathize with him way less. And it's so interesting because a lot of times I think, and you know me, like I'm kind of a villain apologist, but a lot of times when we see villains do bad things, I have a tendency to sort of, there was this tragic backstory, or they were doing it to protect this person, or they were doing it because they didn't realize that, or it was impulsive, it was whatever. And you sort of rationalize it a little bit, not to where you excuse the bad things they do, but to where you put it in a framework where you can almost empathize with it. Where, like, in your head, you're like, well, I wouldn't go that dark. I would never even go anywhere near that dark, but I can kind of empathize with the impulse to at least be angry in this situation. Blah, blah, blah. And if somebody's very good at portraying a villain or very good at portraying a sympathetic villain, if the story is written with enough nuance, they can kind of draw you in, and it's like it's an interesting character exploration. In this, at no point do they try to get you. Well, I'm not saying they wouldn't try to get you to empathize with him, but at no point are they actually trying to make you empathize with his bad choices. While they do show you bits and pieces of quote unquote a tragic backstory, whenever he is narrating and he's rationalizing what's inside his head, it's like revoltingly narcissistic and like sociopathic ish. And it's mostly narcissistic, like he is the center of his own world. I do not empathize with or enjoy him at all. I find his character revolting, and not even just because he murders people, but like his entire demeanor and personality is just like the exact opposite of everything I enjoy in a human being. But that is why I want you to watch the show, because this is one instance where I won't sit here and defend the villain.
I will consider it, but I'm not in the position to want to invite that into my life, even in a fictional sense. Let's put that as the diplomatic response to that.
That's so fair. It is a little uncomfortable just due to like the subject matter, but anyways, it's been renewed for season 4. Season 1, he's obsessed with some girl, and it basically sets the premise for the cycle. Season 2, we meet the girl that you're seeing in the thumbnail right now. Her name's Love. She's fantastic. She's just way more interesting. She's just as villainy as him, but just far less annoying personality. Like a truly enjoyable personality, as villainesses go, as murderesses go, whatever. Season 3, we get to see them in the suburbs, and season 4, the setting will be Paris, France, the city of love. So that will be very exciting. So, setting that aside, what do you say we jump into Only Murders in the Building series finale? Season finale.
I guess so. I mean, I bet you're pretty excited. You texted me that day far more than I think you've ever asked. Hey, have you watched something? Have you watched this? You texted me like 4 times. Have you watched it yet? I was like, no.
Kate usually watches things way faster than me, actually. I watch more than you, but I'm willing to put things, off a little later than you and then just kind of like marathon it. So the fact that I watched this like the second it was available and I was like, hey, Kate, did you watch it yet? You're like, no, I'm at school. Do you not have something else to be doing yourself at your big age? You didn't say that, but it was implied.
I mean, I fully endorse the behavior. I'm not shaming you in any way. I just thought it was funny because I do recognize that I am the one who, when WandaVision was coming out, yeah, I did stay up till 3 every Thursday night, Friday morning to watch it the moment it dropped onto Disney Plus. But I am not in a position where I can do that right now. So I couldn't stay up that late to watch it as it turned Tuesday morning. So then I had to wait until I got back home. And it was like 6 o'clock when I finally got home. And I had other things I still had to do.
I love the progression to adulthood that you've gone through in like the last 8 months alone.
Oh, next semester for various reasons that will be out of the bag. So it's fine. It's less of a maturation of my own personality, and it's far more of a difference in time and setting. Okay.
Gotcha. Not you. It's not you. It's the
It could never be me.
Could never be you.
It's the situation.
Yes.
It's class time. It is what that is.
Right. So the finale. We did both eventually get to the place where we both have watched it, and I just want to jump to the end because if there's anything I don't have in my off hours, it's patience, and I will not patiently wait. So about the building manager being the next murder. Although I was wrong about it being outside of the building, I really did think that the next murder was going to be in some way outside of the building but associated, and it was literally in the building.
But you did say that it could be Bunny.
I did.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy about that.
I fully backed you up on that, and I'm so happy that you got it right.
Thank you. It's my one crowning achievement of the week. What did you think of the finale? What would you rate it?
I want to say like a 10 out of 10, I mean, it's one of those things that will it hold up as one of my favorite series finales compared to like WandaVision? No, but for what it was and what it had to achieve and how well it did it, 10 out of 10. I enjoyed every second. Did I find it kind of predictable? Maybe a little bit, but that's fine.
I think it's worthy of a 10 out of, it's like worthy of a norm reference 10 out of 10. Like compared to other shows, it's somewhere around that like 90% to 100%. It's in
Yeah.
the upper 10% range. So that's what I would give it as well, particularly for the genre. They really carried through the genre the entire way through to the end. And I often find on shows with a comedic element, so a dramedy, I would kind of call this a dramedy, but it's a little heavier on the comedy than most dramedies. By the time you get to the finale, actually, this happens even in comedies, if we're being honest. By the time, even in something that is a straight comedy, you get to the finale, the comedic elements are gone and they're just drama. There's a few little jokes in there, but it's just drama. But if it's a hybrid, like a dramedy, like this is, or an action comedy or a romantic comedy or whatever, you have comedy really strong at the beginning, kind of carries through in the middle, and by the end, they're just packing in plot and whatever the other thing is. In this, and you actually brought this up, and I had kind of noticed it at the time while watching, but I hadn't really put the words to it. Even in the end, they were still bringing in new kinds of comedy with the physical comedy that we saw with Steve Martin's character. It was really interesting. It wasn't just wrapping up or redoing a joke that they'd done before, but even in the final moments, bringing in entirely new elements. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those shows that I think we can all agree that from episode to episode, it was pretty tonally consistent, which is honestly just impressive in itself. But for the fact that each episode kind of had a little bit of a motif that it was experimenting with, um, even to the very last episode, it's really impressive. So each episode, I think, had a slightly different brand of comedy, even though I think it was most evident this time because of how much it had to rely on his physical comedy. Because it was a heavier topic, it was something that was hard to like make forward jokes about, saying something about like it would have been a little too, I don't know, inconsiderate of them to make super sharp jokes at Charles' expense about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they just made him like a flopping meat sack rolling around, and you can still see that he's like acting, and you can understand how he's feeling, even as everybody assumes he's coked out on a elevator after he's told that he can't make a podcast anymore. So that just that whole element was great, while there was still this really well played intensity that even some thrillers for me have not achieved. Like the entire elevator sequence for me was extremely tense, just because I was like, there he goes, no, there he is, no. I knew it was going to be fine, but it was watching. It was intense.
It was really intense. And there was like that level, there was just that perfect level of like suspense, frustration, and comedy there that I was just really impressed that they were able to nail that and keep that consistent. And when when he is poisoned, that was when I thought the comedy was going to drop out. The second, because early in the episode, early in that scene in particular, where there's that extended scene with him and Jan, and we aren't quite sure if this is them bonding and having a heart to heart, and he's totally bought all of her bullshit, or whether they're both kind of playing each other. Up until that point, there isn't a lot that's funny at all in the episode, and there isn't that much that's moving the plot forward. We're really just seeing how everybody is reacting to this idea that it could be Jan, right? But as soon as he's poisoned, the stakes raise, the plot instantly moves forward, and the episode gets funny again. And that I found really, like kept the pace high on all fronts. It kept it really engaging to watch. I didn't want to look away and just listen to the episode, which is always my inclination with any TV I watch. It is impossible to get me to keep my eyes on the screen. I will always listen, not that my hearing comprehension is that great, but it's hard to get me to have an unriveted look at the TV screen. It really kept me watching the entire time, which was really, really fun.
Yeah. It I mean the show has always done a really great job of balancing and kind of combining and manipulating comedy and suspense in a way that I've rarely seen before. And it does so well at comedy, suspense, drama, character development, all at the same time. So that's the, he had some really great scenes. So that scene where he is talking to Jan, and you're supposed to believe that he trusts her, and even to the point where he says, even if you did kill him, I think I still love you. There's this level of Charles has established before that he is sometimes a little bit blind to reality because he wants to enjoy this imaginary construct that he's made up in his mind. So it's very easy to see how they use that to like trick us and to say like he actually feels this way, even to the point of tricking her.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see all along, because he had to have planned this, all along he knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. He already thought this through, and he had the forethought to record it. And even though he didn't catch all of her moves and he still got poisoned through the handkerchief, even his ability to play off this emotional scene and not drink the drink and still pretend like he's been drinking the drink is great. And then you kind of pose his like ability to kind of come off as calm and sincere against Jan's arguable, slow, but all of a sudden very fast descent into what the? You're not just a killer. You seem serial killer level. Wow, okay. And then that kind of same energy really carried over to like the boiler room scene where you're supposed to believe that he kind of overcomes the poison and he stands up and gives this great speech. And then you find out he's just sitting there making absolutely no sense. And
I loved that juxtaposition where, because I really thought he was like kind of coming out of paralysis, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. They haven't given him an antidote yet. Like, that was a bit hand wavy.
Yeah.
Nope.
No, I mean there are some things in this show that I wouldn't have been too surprised if they kind of did that level of hand wavy, and I would have been fine with it. But I love that they both messed with that idea of, hey, hand wave. Oh wait, no. This is a hallucination. This is what he thinks is going to happen, but it's not really happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mabel kind of, as she has always had to do, saves the day in the most like, come on guys, let's go attitude, which is just great.
You mentioned the kind of quick descent into madness for Jan, which is definitely true. And then looking back now, for me, I kind of see more all of the signs that she was the murderer, blah, 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 which I know we were suspecting it at the end of last episode, but I was the one still saying, like, I don't think it's her. I think it's going to be a fake out, whatever. And I think part of that was I was hoping it wasn't that I was hoping that the villain wouldn't be a woman. It was that I had seen thus far this season, they kept writing older women as bad. I don't know how else to say that I really would have found it to be a flaw if it was her, which it was, and they did, and they wrote her, crazy and, jealous and spiteful and manhunty and all of that. And they kept Bunny crazy until the very end. A line that really sticks out to me to that end is when they have Mabel very specifically call her a crazy old bitch, which I felt was kind of odd in the moment. And now I realize they were having her say that in the where she says that line towards the end is in public, so there's other viewers and witnesses of it, which is going to make people make people think that she's the murderer next season. And I just that his stunt double, the Sue Sylvester character, name escapes me, who I loved, but again, they show her, being the girlfriend stealer and kind of the crazy, socially out of touch, occasionally mean, whatever type of person. Overall, and I know I mentioned this to you earlier, I am not crazy about the way thus far this show has written older women as more often than not kind of bitter, crazy hags. And it's literally the only complaint I have about this show. This is I'm still giving it holistically a 10 out of 10, but I really think in season 2 they need to get it together how they're portraying older women.
I completely agree with you, and I definitely understand where you're coming from. I do feel like I want to take the devil's advocate route on this one though, and point out a couple of things, not to necessarily say like that they did okay, but like they didn't do terrible in that score actually, in my view. There's only like 3 people that are under the age of 50 in the entire show anyway,
That's
which is
fair.
Tim and he's dead,
Right.
Oscar, and Mabel. And so then you really take it, and we start out with Charles, and Charles is kind of the same way, and we don't get to see Charles develop into a likable character until he gets into the group and starts doing this investigation. And to an extent, I think Oliver had some unlikable qualities in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to say that they're both completely changed, that they don't have things that can get annoying or anything like that, but I think they both became far more considerate of their fellow man throughout this show. That because all the other older women in the show didn't have the same prominence in the story, they didn't get that development. You can see Jan, and Jan's kind of weirdly, Jan's kind of like the middle of the scale. Like she's not as young as Mabel, but she's not as old as everybody else that lives in these apartments or Laconia. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a weird, I don't know really if that has anything significant. I just felt like pointing that out. But when we left the Arconia and we meet Mabel's mother was actually for how short of a time we got to see her, was a pretty well developed character
Mm-hmm.
and had a lot of like depth. And even though she was kind of like, I guess, mom bearish, that's a perfectly reasonable, and that's never really seen as, unless you go to an extent that's overly controlling. She was in a point of, this is perfectly understandable. Nobody would call her crazy.
Yeah.
They would call her mom. They even had other female characters in Yerconia that were also really well developed. The neighbor of Tim, the one who didn't like Howard. I said well developed. That's kind of a stretching of the truth because I don't remember anybody's name. But
I
they
never
had
do.
they had potential, and you could see that they weren't 100% on either side of the coin here, but they weren't completely like hateful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, yeah, it definitely plays into the mad woman trope with Jan, but I also think they picked Jan less because she's an old woman, and I think more of it's because she had such a like disarming nature about her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and for the fact that it wasn't an immediately obvious assumption about Tim and everything else. So that was a lot of like trying to play the subversion game rather than playing the mad old woman game. Whereas they definitely are playing the mad old woman game with Bunny. And I think
Yes.
they're doing that on purpose to develop her character as we see her post mortem.
Mm-hmm. Like to show, I think what will be interesting with Bunny is they'll have the opportunity, whether it be through flashbacks, through whatever, to show another side of her now that we get to explore her after her death. And that may reveal her to be more than that initial stereotype you've listed. So I will grant you that number one, you've listed multiple female characters who are potentially old or older who were not portrayed as crazy mean hags. They were there from time to time. Number two, I will also grant you that almost everybody on this show comes across as a little bit abrasive and crazy until you get to know them more. So that is
I mean,
fair.
and I totally understand where you're coming from, and there is a level that I agree with you, but I'm still kind of leaving them with the benefit of the doubt on this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially given how well they've done everything else, how well they've portrayed, for example, the dynamic between Mabel, Oliver, and Charles, and how that has stayed, funny and interesting and occasionally distrustful and betraying, but not like disrespectful in some sort of sexist sense or disrespectful in some sort of ageist sense. So I can presume that they know how to do that. I'm looking at the cast list right now and realizing in season two, they essentially just have an opportunity to bring on more women because they have a lot of men on this show right now. A lot of men.
Well, I even like watched a interview with the three main cast members. I don't remember which Jimmy it was with, but it was with somebody. Um, and they were talking about how when Steve Martin initially pitched it, it was kind of a three old men do a mystery. And I think when other creatives got involved, they pointed out, first of all, it'd be kind of a little bit one note. You add in basically the complete opposite of that description, and you add in a whole lot of texture. You also then kind of make the whole dynamic that the two old men are the more wacky, zany, a little bit abrasive of the three, and you make the young woman the more calm, cool, collected. Not She's not necessarily the most warm and likable because she is kind of cold and reserved, but the more like charming, I guess you could say, of all three of them.
I would also say she's more likable.
I mean, I liked her the most, but you don't get to know her as quickly as the other two because she doesn't put herself out there as much.
Looking through the cast list and realizing they've really pulled from all corners of pop culture, internet, etc. to staff this thing. I did not even
Yeah.
realize that Jabuki Young White was in this thing. And if you don't know who that is, unless somehow somebody's fake editing this thing, he's like a really kind of quirky Twitter famous person, comedian type of thing. That's funny, if true. Um, I think he was one of the like supposed to be super fans in the super fan episode. Well, season two, we're going to get into the murder of Bunny, potentially done by the Only Murders in the Building podcast host Mabel, question mark, right? Could be her, right,
Right.
guys? Right? No.
I'm so relieved that she just killed somebody for no reason.
Right. Maybe it was self defense. I'm so excited for season two of this. Kate, what else have you watched this week, if anything?
I watched just like the first few minutes of the show Made I mentioned a few weeks ago. I really just kind of started it, realized it was a even more of an emotional behemoth than I had expected. I still want to watch it, but I need to be like in a time where I can sit down and watch it for an hour and prepare myself for that. But from what I saw so far, it was pretty good, and I am excited to finish watching it.
I'm still wanting to watch that, but I've heard nothing but good about it. I think my sister started to watch it and was mentioning it was really good. And apparently, it's hard to watch throughout, but I hear it's based on real life events and
It's based on a memoir.
yeah, real life memoir written by the maid who got through it all. So that gives me hope that there is something of a happy ending, which may make the heavier source material worth it. One thing I saw this week, and I'm not sure, well, okay, two things that are somewhat new. We got the new Batman trailer this week, but I think I don't know if it's new or just new to me, but the Hawkeye trailer aired during the Bachelorette premiere yesterday. So I don't know if that trailer is familiar to everybody else, but that was actually the first time I'd seen it, and I'm now very excited about that. It's being promoted as very like Christmassy, which is interesting. Have you seen the trailer I'm referencing? And is it old news to everybody else?
They might have made a new trailer, but I saw a trailer probably about a month ago.
Okay. I remember seeing like a short teaser or something like that a month ago, and I think this one has a lot more content, but it also had like a way different spin and seemed like a proper trailer to me. But again, it may not be new. Saw it during the Bachelorette premiere, which is something I did watch this week. Shout out Michelle, our teacher Bachelorette. She seems really great, and none of the men are even a little bit impressive, but they all look like they can model for Aeropostale. So you win some, you lose some, you know? We also had some new Married at First Sight content, which is great. We really might have, and I think I say this every season, but we may have a new contender for worst guy to ever grace the show. And I really didn't think anybody could top Chris from last season, who was just absolutely insane and crazy and rude and just like everything you can think of, belligerent. We now have Johnny, which is just a fun and fresh new kind of awful. Every single word that comes out of his mouth is like gaslighting and manipulative, but bad at it. Like he's trying to manipulate in like the most mean, cruel, hurtful ways, which would be bad, but then it's like also cringy to watch because he is also bad at it. Like it's very transparent what he's trying to do. Disgusting. Zero
That
out of
is
10
when
for
you
him.
gaslight the gaslighter.
What now?
That is when you gaslight the gaslighter about how bad they are at gaslighting.
Literally. Literally. If they paired him with somebody with like enough manipulative spine to give him what he was serving, he'd be crying in a corner. Unfortunately, they paired him with somebody who's really sweet and nice, and she's just like, "Oh, you want me to try harder and give you more physical affection? Sure, I can totally do that." And meanwhile, he's like cackling like a villain in the corner, thinking he's won some imaginary battle. Shows like this really make me hate people. Why do I watch them? Because I'm very entertained by them. Very. And a
I just
whole
don't get it.
that's so good. I don't want you to ever get it. Keep the part of you that is still healthy and not entertained by train wrecks whole. The wholesome thing that I watched this week is I started watching the latest season of Great British Bake Off, which is currently posting new episodes weekly, I think, on Netflix. I haven't scrolled ahead because I'm trying not to spoil myself on it. It's like one of the only things I don't want spoilers on. But I don't believe that we're anywhere near the final episodes. But I think we're like close to like halfway through. I've only watched the first few. That is wholesome, fabulous content. Cures my mental health every single time. 10 out of 10 would recommend. If you watch nothing else, watch that. Have you
I
ever
just
watched Great
wish I
British?
could find. I've seen like an episode or two of Great British Bake Off. The
Okay.
one I actually watched more of, I think I told you about this one time, was like their pottery version of it.
Kate, I have had that in my to watch list ever since you suggested it, and I cannot for the life of me find it online.
I can't find it anymore either.
It's
Maybe it was just
literally
like a
stayed on my
fever
list
dream.
on like the front because I've got like multiple lists within this app, and I'll like put things kind of like off into a hidden view if I think I'm not ever going to watch it. And this one, like, me, reality competitions, I'm a sucker for it. It stayed in my front list. The Great Pottery Throwdown.
Yes.
Hopefully, I'm not flashing
So it
personal
does
information on
exist.
screen. There you go. Can't find it anywhere.
I don't even remember where I watched it. I just remember watching the 2 seasons I could find, really enjoying it, thinking that somebody got way too far into the competition, and then telling you about it, and I couldn't find it ever again.
Hmm. Did it ever really exist? Be honest.
I mean, you could tell me it didn't, and I might believe you.
I've watched Face Off, which is a show, a reality competition on making like sci-fi effects with makeup and prosthetics. I've watched The Great Flower Something, which is where like teams come together to build these like giant flower structures. Any sort of like reality competition type of thing, I eat it up. Master Chef, Top Chef, cooking competitions, all of it. I'm there. Project Runway, there every time. Like that entire genre of like competitive reality television, obsessed. The more obscure the thing is that they're competing over, the better. Which
Yeah,
is also
well,
why I
and
was really
especially if it's,
into Alone from the History Channel.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Oh, that's a good one. You should watch it.
Okay, I'll look it up.
It's on Netflix. It was through the History Channel, but season 7 is when it really took off. Start with season 7 because every season it's just like a new set of contestants, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Season 7 though is
Yeah,
the most recent one that is on Netflix, and it's fantastic, like really 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 good setting, contestants, etc. And they won't give you any genre, any drama, I should say, between the contestants, because at no point do the contestants ever see or interact with each other. The whole premise of the show is like you're stuck in the middle of nowhere alone. They do not all go find each other, they do not talk to each other, they cannot ever interact, there is no drama.
wow. That's really fitting that it took off at this time in the world.
Right?
COVID TM.
Yeah. Well, that wraps us for tonight. I do not have any contribution to what I read this week because while I read more this week, it has been dutifully from the books that I have already started, and I'm not allowed to start any more books until I finish at least one that I currently have in progress. So stay tuned for more on that front. And I will talk to you same
I
time. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I finished my Calamity Jane and I started another book.
Oh, you did do some reading this week. Okay, go off.
Yeah, I
What'd
read.
you read?
I I finished my Calamity Jane, the werewolf Calamity Jane story. You know, excellent, just like all those other books were in the best, weirdest way possible. And then I completely switched gears, and now I'm reading The Exiles by Christina Baker Klein, which is
Okay.
about like the transportation of criminals to Australia
Ah,
during the 1840s, and it like follows the 3 different women kind of impacted by that system.
that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, somebody lent that book to me, said that I really like it, so I'm reading it.
That sounds bomb. Would read. I'll add
Mhm.
that to the list of books that I'm not allowed to start until I finish what's already on my plate.
No dessert before you finish your plate as is.
See, it's when you say that I want to do it. Like when I tell myself that I can't start another book till I finish what I already have, that's when I want to start another book. I got to finish what I already have.
I mean, I know that's what I'm doing. But why do you think I sent you a massive, just accidental list? Like, here's what I'm going to be reading in the next few weeks. Join the club.
I'll do that in all the free time I don't have. Okay.
Same here.
Well, I will talk to you same time, same place next week. Actually, maybe not. Is that too close to Halloween? Possibly same time, same place next week. Possibly skipping a week because of Halloween. We'll see. We'll see. And then we will enter November, which is the return of all of the shows. There's a 5-hour Riverdale event coming up. there go my last two brain cells. There's a Flash crossover with Everything Else event coming up, which will have Mia Smoke in it. I will
So we
regain
have
2 more
to
brain
watch.
cells. Yes, you do.
Oh,
She's wearing
no.
Felicity's
I
engagement ring
know.
around her
I
neck.
saw that. I saw that, and I was like, oh, whoever is producing those shows now, I see what you
They
did, and
know
I
what they're
know,
doing.
yes, they know exactly who they were targeting with that ring placement in those photos.
The fact that they even have Mia Smoke coming into the crossover, stealing the spotlight entirely, hilarious to me, because you know we're not going to care about the crossover with like, oh, Flash and Supergirl, which is getting canceled again. Yay. So they have to bring in somebody you care about. Everybody else like having to take a back seat, which I guess some people are salty about it, but you know, sometimes you lose.
I mean, for the fact that that show has been over 2 years, basically three for a lot of fans, considering eight, um, just the fact that we continue to win, it's just wonderful. It tastes so good.
Chef's kiss. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. All of my
Exactly.
attitude problems come from that show. It's
That's
where y'all
fair.
it's where y'all can send your therapy bills from my bad attitude. And I'm not gonna stop. And then what?
Mhm.
And on that note, I do promise before the crossover to do some kind of synopsis type of thing of like, here's what you need to know to understand, you know, what everybody's fighting about. But I suspect it's going to be pretty easy to follow along when you don't care about literally anybody but Mia Smoke. You know. All right. Well,
Mhm.
it is time to say goodbye. I will talk to you next week or the week after to catch up on what we watch this